Pilgrim and the Nun is a modern conversation about life's spiritual journeys.
Welcome back to The Nun and the Pilgrim. Last week we spoke about smartphones and how they can hinder or help your meditative practice and your spiritual journey. This week, I wanted to speak a little bit more about the 6 perfections. My first question is, why are they called perfections?
Good question. These 6 perfections are qualities which we want to develop where to reach enlightenment, to become the perfect one. And it's described that this happens in steps. So maybe you have heard about Bodhisattva on level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the final enlightenment is number 10. And when you have perfected the first perfection, generosity, then you have reached the Bodhisattva level number 1. If you have perfected, which means you really, like with generosity, you don't think about it, it's just ingrained in your bones that you are generous, then you have perfected that one. And that's why they are called perfections, because we have the aspiration to become an enlightened being, and we try to perfect it. That's why they are called perfections. And if you have perfected it, you reach a bodhisattva level.
I see. But these are the 10 bodhisattva levels and there are only 6 perfections.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to go.
Okay.
After you have perfected all 10, all 6 of them.
Gotcha. And so we can leave that for another episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 6 are generosity, something called moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. So my understanding is that they are in some kind of hierarchy, and that concentration and wisdom are the more weighted or more important ones. And you are actually practicing the first 4 in order to do the last 2 better. But I just learned that you can't separate them. They're actually all intertwined as well. So how does that work?
It's clearly described that one perfection helps you to perfect the next one. Like if you perfect generosity, if you are giving, this helps you to develop the next perfection, which is moral discipline. Because when you are giving, you are already restraining yourself. And this helps you to develop the second one, and so on. And if you develop moral discipline, if you are as disciplined that you really know the do's and don'ts, then it helps you to not get angry, because you already learn to restrain yourself in a certain way. So one leads to the other. But on the other side, if you start with the first one and you don't have concentration and wisdom, then giving is, you give by giving, but you don't do it with the wisdom of cause and effect and emptiness. And if you don't do it with the knowledge of cause and effect and emptiness, then you are not planting very strong seeds, because this is something else that all these help you to if you do the 6 perfections, you are planting seeds to reach enlightenment. You are not doing it because you want to be healthy and wealthy or whatever in this life. You are doing it on purpose because you want to reach enlightenment. What was your question?
I don't know, it is a great explanation.
Yeah. So you need to have the wisdom and the concentration that you are really able to give in a way that you are planting the seeds for enlightenment. So on the other side, it's like you're stepping up a ladder if you perfect one perfection after the other, but you cannot perfect the first one, giving, if you don't have the other ones. So that's very If you are a very angry person, I think your generosity is not very good.
Not.
If you are not doing it with joyful effort, your seeds of giving will not be good and great and powerful seeds.
So it's kind of the giving probably makes you think about other people and control yourself better, because you're shifting your perspective from me to other people, right? And giving. And in and of itself, it's an important behavior or habit to have.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing it with the understanding about how it fits into the bigger picture and having a world view, it's not as powerful as it could be.
Exactly.
And so that supports the moral discipline, because you now have better self-control or self-regulation, let's say.
Yeah.
And I want to talk more about moral discipline maybe in another session, but I really have to understand what that really is. What does it mean? It's a very strange phrase, I suppose. Patience, I suppose, that doesn't require any explanation. I think everyone knows what patience is. Joyful effort is just doing something with that generosity, that joyfulness, that happiness, making it a happy thing to do, not while you're doing it, right? Or is that something
I would define it as being happy when you do good things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's back to that celebrating the good things that we do every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's concentration, which is related to meditative practices, meditating, being able to concentrate, and then wisdom is the way that you see the world. So each of these are much more complex than they seem on the. When you say them, they seem very simple, but each of them are a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
So I want you to explain to me a little bit more about how generosity is more than what it seems when you're just reading the list.
Yeah. Generosity, in the definition in the old scriptures, are 3 types of generosity. It's the generosity of giving material things. Let's really help somebody by giving vegetables, as we mentioned earlier, or clothes, or anything of material things. Then the second one is protection from fear. You are giving protection from fear. So you protect others from harm, from fear of thieves and muggers or spiders or being robbed on the underground or whatever it is what the person fears. And the third one is giving the Dharma. And I think it would be worth if we explore how we can really practice these 3 types of generosity in our daily life.
So giving material things is pretty straightforward, right? We've all, most of us, I'm sure, have been taught to be generous and give people if they ask for money or if they need clothing and so on. So helping out people or helping someone start a business. Is a material thing also assistance? Like I can assist you in putting on your gate because your gate is falling down, or helping you start your new business, or giving you a good connection with someone who might be able to help you, those kinds of things.
I would define everything of it. Also giving respect to other people, it's a kind of giving. You are giving them something. So I think I would really combine in this also giving time, giving help, giving advice. Yeah.
Okay. And it's important, however, to give within your means. Is that correct, or does that not count?
That's totally correct, and only what you can give with a happy heart.
Okay, so don't give and then resent.
And don't overdo it. And I think there is where the wisdom comes in. Give with a very open and compassionate heart. Give freely. Give what you can give without influence your own living. And be happy about it.
Yeah. So if I'm working extra hours, let's say, I'm giving my time and my effort, then do so and be joyful about it, and don't expect anything back, or don't expect someone to say, and don't then go home and be grumpy about the fact that you've given extra hours and no one's saying anything.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so the second one you said was protection from fear. And so that would be making sure that someone is safe. So that could be psychological safety, or is that physical safety, or is that both?
Both.
Okay. And what would be an example of that? So, I grew up in South Africa, And so, for us, we grew up fearful in a way because everyone had walls around their houses, and you always had an alarm system on in your house. If you didn't have that, people thought you were mad. You always had to switch on the alarm at night when you go to bed and switch it on in the morning and so on. I think a lot of it was necessary in some cases, but I think it was overkill and generated more fear over time, which I was always very concerned about. But it would be to make sure that maybe someone doesn't get beaten up, or if you see someone being attacked.
Yeah.
But on a practical level, I mean, most of us won't experience that, I don't think, in our lifetime. So how would be practical and simple ways of protecting people from fear?
Just thinking about a good example. For example, if you meet somebody at the underground, I often meet there people who are tourists, or they don't know the underground system, and that's quite complicated here in Munich. And you can really see, oh, they have fear to be too late. They have fear to get lost. They don't know if they buy the correct ticket. Helping in these situations, and I think it's quite easy to see if somebody has fear. So, and sometimes it's so easy to help them. So for me, for example, it's really one of my personal practices to help everybody in the Munich underground who don't know where to go, which line to take, and which ticket to buy. So that's, for example, and it's very interesting how really thankful people are for it, because there I sense really what kind of pressure it puts on them.
Yeah, so it gives them a sense of relief that someone is helping them. They know where to go now, how to get there. Yeah, that's true. I remember that being true in when I went to Japan, because I was just like, I don't know what's going on and where to go and which train to take.
And I think there are so many small things. Or, for example, I'm not reading newspapers, so I'm also not influenced by all the fear, for example, media sometimes really generate. So I find it always interesting when then people want to talk to me when they are doing small talk. Oh, have you read blah, blah there? And then I find it very interesting when I then ask why they have fear, then suddenly I notice that I can put their mind to rest, because it's really sometimes not based on facts.
And it's so interesting. I've just been thinking, given that we're now dealing with COVID and the numbers going up and down, I'm sure a lot of people are fearful. Some people are not, but some people are. So what we can do to help alleviate people's fears around that as well. Yeah, here at Diamond Mountain, the thing that we mostly have to deal with is spiders in the houses. So if there's a spider, I have to go and catch the spider and take it out. So I have to manage someone else's fear, but I also have to manage my own fear with catching a spider. So good.
Yeah,
and then the
this
last
is also something that you can explain simply people how to behave and react in a way that their fear is taken away. That a few easy rules might help, not being attacked.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the last one was teaching the Dharma.
Yeah.
Or is it teaching the Dharma or sharing the Dharma? What exactly?
Giving the Dharma.
Giving the Dharma.
Very nice, because we are in giving, generosity, so it's giving the Dharma. And it said that's the highest form of giving. And I can think of so many ways how you can do it on a daily basis without having this setting which everybody has in mind. When you talk about giving the Dharma, it's like, oh, you are teaching people about Buddhist philosophy, but there are so many other ways in giving the Dharma. I had for a long time, it was really a hobby for me to gather all the idioms in German which refer to cause and effect. So I think in English, it's the most famous one is what comes around goes around. No, the other way. What goes around
comes around.
What goes around comes around. One of the famous German ones is it will, this effect when you sing in the mountains and the echo is coming back, and the saying, like it's the same with people, how you shout into the forest, it will come back, and the forest there is people. So I don't know, do you have other English ones?
The one that came up for me is treat your neighbor like you want yourself to be treated. Something to that effect. So
a very famous one. And so I gathered all these idioms and I tried to use them in daily conversations. So in regard to myself, if I had problems, so then I can talk to others like, so what do I expect? I behave the same way, so it will come back to me. Or if somebody else is complaining, and then I just try to put it some kind of informal, because we are not missionaries, so we try to help people in a very, very, in a way that they can take it. And I put these idioms like on my palm, and then I check if they take it. And also because in West Europe, most people are Christian, so you can also use a lot of the Christian quotes which refer to cause and effect, and there are plenty out there.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, that leads me to advertisement. There's a beautiful book from Geshe Michael Roach, which is called what is the English title? The Eastern Path. I think it's only called The Eastern Path, where he checks the Bible for all quotes which refer to emptiness or cause and effect. And I highly recommend it to everybody who has grown up in a Christian culture.
Yeah, because I find that the more I learn about different religions or philosophies, they often overlap. There are these common themes, around how to live your life and how things will work better if you just follow a certain system. Yeah. And everyone has their own system, but I have noticed there are lots of commonalities, which is very intriguing.
I find it because all the major religions have this common core altogether, like the Ten Commandments. I think they are in each religion more or less the same. That's for me proof that every being who has touched and developed to this superhero, they experience the more or less the same things. And then the different religions are simply different expressions of the same message.
And to bring it back to your example about giving the Dharma, that could also be helping someone else be generous, right? So if you're noticing, would that be a way of giving the Dharma? Like if you notice someone is struggling with it, to say, sometimes it's good just to give a little bit less, but to still be giving, because, and then explain why it might be important to be generous, for example.
Yeah, I have long discussions about tips for waiters not to be friendly with other people. Yeah, for example, yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what the listeners have as examples for some of these kinds of generosities that they might be practicing. And maybe they've learned something new because we've gone a little bit deeper into it than before. So that's, for me, very, very helpful. So thank you for that.
And I think I think there's also another aspect. So because we talked about the influence of the perfections, how they influence each other. And I think with generosity, when you start practicing generosity and you do it with wisdom, which automatically leads to the question, how can you really give very karmically intelligent? So maybe it's worth that we talk a little bit about that as well.
So when you say that, what do you mean?
You mentioned in the beginning, for example, it's not about giving and giving as much as you can. Giving karmically intelligent is giving joyfully. If you give one apple joyfully, I believe that this is more and better karma than if you give a truckload of apples and in your heart you complain about it or you're not happy about it. So I think, and that also leads to the perfection of joyful effort. So there is how we can see how all these other perfections influence the generosity. and make the seeds very, very powerful.
It's so interesting when you're speaking of that. I think about parents as well. It must be very difficult for parents because they give so much to make sure their children are safe and they have what they need. And it must be very hard for parents. I'm not a parent, but I've just noticed my sister has 3 children. And sometimes I think it's hard for them not to say, I'm giving up all these things. I'm giving it to you because, you are my child and I love you and so on. And so it's I suppose for us, it's always to make sure that we check ourselves, right, in that giving, to make sure that it stays within those parameters of it's not harming me. I'm not resentful about it. I can remain joyful about it. I could not expect something in return, because that's the other part of it, right?
Yeah. And on the other side, because you mentioned parents, your parents are one of the highest karmic objects you can give. And that's the beauty when your parents get older and you are able to help them, you are able to support them with everything we mentioned, with time, with love, with material assistance. Then you are on the other side paying back the kindness they have given you, and that makes the karma so strong. The same with all other persons which really have helped you and supported you. So the parents are really a very, very high object. And I had one 4-step project with my mother, and the results are incredible because she is such a high karmic object.
I think we definitely have to do some 4 steps in one of our next programs as well, because I think that's always something useful and fun to do.
And also a very high karmic object are people who are really in need. So if you have sometimes you have to decide whom you help, because you don't have so much time, you don't have endless resources in this body we are in, or there is some kind of limitation. So then you really have to decide what is the highest karmic object, where do I plant the most powerful seeds. And it's not against our normal general instinct, because I think our instinct is to help people which are in dire need first, before we help people which are not in dire need.
And so that's also making sure, well, I suppose you helping those people, where you're being generous or giving to those people who need it the most at that time. Does that change the karmic seed or the power of that action, or is it just the same in the end? So if I help someone who needs it more versus someone who maybe needs it less, I don't know you could probably see just from their conditions, but sometimes you have 2 choices and you don't know which one to help. So
then help the one who needs it more. It's more powerful because they need it, and you help them on a different level.
Okay, that's very helpful as well.
So
very good. And so that
I think that's really that is bodhisattva life, that you become a better and better person, and suddenly you have to decide whom to help. Because
I think you're deciding that all the time, right?
Because suddenly you see so many people who need your help.
Totally. Good. And so that for me is generosity explained in more depth, and also explaining how it connects with some of the other perfections, and how it has to be informed by meditative, being mindful about it, and having the wisdom, having it sit inside the wisdom of why I'm doing this, and the choices that I'm making, and what the effect of this will be, and what the karmic seeds are around this. Okay, so I'm going to go into my week with a very different approach and attitude to my giving.
Maybe I think I had the idea in the moment that we can define how each of the other 5 influences your generosity. So if you give in combination with moral discipline, you only give things which you really own. You don't give things you don't own.
Okay, is that how
you have not acquired properly, which you simply you don't give things you don't own. The next
Okay.
one is patience. Yeah, never ever give with anger, or the opposite, never take in anger. So yeah.
Mhm,
Joyful
mhm.
effort, we already discussed. If you don't give us joyful effort, your seeds will not be as strong. If every time, if you do a good deed and afterwards you're not happy about this, you don't even plant a seed, I would say, which will ripen.
The way that I've explained to myself how that works is like if you plant something, you have to water it. And so you have to celebrate it, you have to acknowledge it, you have to be mindful of the fact that you did that. Because I'm very quick to do something and then just forget about it, And I've had a little bit of trouble slowing down enough to say, I have to celebrate this thing that I did today, which is part of some of the ceremonies we do.
It goes back to the complete path of action, which is described in the Abhidharma Kosha. And the last one is mentioned, you own the deed. And you own the deed means you are happy about a good deed. And if you don't do that, then you have not completed the path of action to really plant a seed.
So if I don't water it, it's not going to grow.
It will.
Or it won't grow as nicely.
Yeah. And I think with concentration and meditation, it's also about the awareness that you are even reminding yourself to be generous. If you don't have this ability, which you develop in meditation, that you are aware of your thoughts, your speech, and your action, you don't even remind to be generous.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Or forget about it. And the wisdom is that when you give, you really remind yourself about cause and effect, that you are doing a good deed to really plant your future Buddhahood.
Yes,
and it's don't expect thanks from the person you are giving to, because you are planting a seed by giving, which will come back to you later on.
You anyway. Exactly. All right. Well, I think that's really given everyone a deep dive into the perfection of generosity or giving. And I hope you're all going to go away this week and go and practice that a little bit, be a little bit more mindful about it, celebrate it, and remember the world view to hold while you're doing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Salam. Have a nice one. Speak soon.
Next Tuesday.
Okay, bye.
Bye.